Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where Reddit drama goes off the rails. Today's episode? Total chaos. We've got 18 r/8h stories full of breakups, betrayals, and brutal family truths. A woman's ready to divorce her husband over MrBeast videos. Someone gets ghosted, then blasted for adopting a dog. There's a parent who reacts to their daughter coming out with who wants dessert. And don't even get me started on the thesis partner from hell. Every story is messier than the last, and just when you think you've heard the worst, the next one hits harder. So whether you're folding laundry or hiding from your own drama, settle in. This is the kind of lineup that'll have you yelling at your screen like, no way they thought they were in the right. And hey, help us hit that 10K milestone. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, because it only gets wilder from here. Let's get into it. Am I the asshole for threatening to divorce my husband over MrBeast? Let's take a moment to really picture this. You're lying in bed on a quiet Sunday morning. The sun's barely risen. The world is still peaceful, and you're just starting to drift into that delicious kind of sleep where everything feels calm. Then, from somewhere in the house, a voice erupts. Last to leave the circle wins $500,000. It's not a dream. It's not a nightmare. It's MrBeast. Again, blasting from a phone speaker at max volume at 9 a.m., and that's exactly what the writer is living with. She's 24, newly married, and navigating something she probably never expected would threaten her peace or her sanity. Her husband, 26, has partial hearing loss from his days as a DJ. Understandable. It means he needs things a little louder than most people. That's fair. But the issue? It's not just volume. It's the constant, relentless, hyper-edited chaos of MrBeast videos. The yelling, the countdowns, the over-the-top challenges blaring from her husband's phone speakers every single day, in the shower, during breakfast, in the living room, through the walls, 2 floors down. And it's not a variety of content either. No documentaries, no music, not even other YouTubers. Just MrBeast. Over and over and over again. It's reached the point where the writer, completely sleep-deprived and overstimulated, finally snaps. After being jolted awake for the 3rd time in 1 week by yet another YouTube spectacle, she blurts out, "If I hear one more MrBeast video at full volume, I'm filing for divorce." And the moment those words left her mouth, everything shifted. Her husband didn't laugh, he didn't roll his eyes, he sulked, accused her of not respecting his hobbies, said she was being inconsiderate of his hearing needs. Claimed that her frustration wasn't about the volume, it was about judging his interests. And that's when this silly argument about YouTube turned into something deeper. Because let's be real, this isn't just about MrBeast. It's about feeling unheard in your own home. It's about living with someone but not being able to escape their presence, even when they're not talking to you. It's about having your peace constantly invaded by noise you didn't choose. And maybe, just maybe, it's about seeing your partner stuck in a phase of life that feels immature and not knowing how to say, "I need you to grow with me." The writer tried to find compromise. She asked him to use headphones. He said no, he doesn't like them. She suggested subtitles. He said no, that's not relaxing. She even bought a Bluetooth speaker, thinking maybe it'd help balance the sound or direct it better. Nope. Shut that down too. Every solution she offered was met with resistance. And that resistance, it's not just inconvenient, it's dismissive. Because here's the truth. When you love someone, you adapt. You meet them halfway. You compromise. You don't treat your comfort as the only one that matters in a shared space. You don't force your spouse to live inside a 24/7 algorithm-fueled screaming match against their will. And the writer says it herself. It's not just the noise, it's the content. She feels like she's living inside a YouTube thumbnail, surrounded by flashy titles and clickbait energy. She's exhausted, not just from the decibels, but from the emotional weight of living with someone who won't take her seriously. So, is she the asshole for threatening divorce? Maybe the phrasing was sharp. Maybe it was said out of pure frustration, but you know what? Sometimes we say things out loud because we don't feel like we're being heard quietly. And if her husband had been listening, really listening, maybe this moment wouldn't have happened at all. Because this isn't about hating MrBeast. It's about wanting a moment of calm, a little bit of silence, a sense that her space matters too. So no, writer, You're not the asshole. You're a human being who needs rest, peace, and respect in your home. And if your partner can't meet you halfway on something as basic as volume control, it's not just a YouTube video. It's a symptom of something much louder. Am I the asshole for breaking up with my boyfriend over this? This isn't just a story about a breakup. This is a story about belonging, about what happens when someone turns a deeply personal moment into a punchline. The writer, a 23-year-old man, recently ended a 2-year relationship with his boyfriend, Zach, 25. And the reason? A comment, a moment, a joke, so-called, that cut far deeper than it ever should have. But to understand this, we need to back up a bit. The writer's cousin, a 29-year-old woman, just got married to her wife in a beautiful, affirming, emotional celebration. And for many, it was just another wedding. But for the writer, it was so much more. See, when you grow up queer, it's not just about love, it's about visibility, about wondering, for years, if you'll ever be accepted, if you'll be allowed to love openly, if your joy will ever be allowed to exist in the light. And here it was, 2 women, standing hand in hand, fully embraced by their community. A queer wedding in the family. It was historic, it was healing, it was hope. And the writer, he felt all of that. And when he was invited to speak during the reception, he didn't make a grand speech. He didn't steal the spotlight. He just said the quiet truth out loud, how proud he was, how beautiful it was to witness this kind of love. It was a vulnerable, genuine moment. But then, the moment passed. He sat down, and Zach leaned over, not with warmth, not with support, but with a whisper designed to flatten everything that had just unfolded. You know, for someone who's not even in the wedding, you're really trying to make it your moment. A sentence that might sound throwaway to someone else, but when you're already carrying the emotional weight of identity, history, and visibility, it lands like a slap. The writer thought, maybe it's a joke, but then Zach followed it up. You gonna cry again or save it for our wedding that we're never having? And there it was. The dagger, twisted in the gut and veiled with a smirk. It would have been easy to explode in that moment, but the writer didn't. Because this night wasn't about him. It was about his cousin, about love, about something bigger than hurt feelings. So he let it go for the moment. But back at the hotel, away from the lights, away from the champagne and speeches, he brought it up. He spoke with clarity, honesty. He told Zach that it hurt, that the comment was dismissive and belittling, that it made something meaningful feel small. And what did Zach do? He mocked him, called him sensitive, said he was overthinking, a phrase so often used to shut down valid emotions. The writer realized something in that moment, something heavy, that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a one-off comment. Maybe it was a symptom of a deeper disregard, a pattern of being emotionally minimized. So he made a choice, a bold, heart-wrenching, necessary choice. He packed his things and left. And now, Zach is texting him, telling him he's made a scene, calling this a weird hill to die on, that he's throwing away a good thing over a dumb joke. But here's the truth that so many people don't want to hear. Jokes are never just jokes when they target your deepest wounds. And when someone you love mocks the things that move you, that's not a joke. That's a red flag with a punchline. Zach didn't have to agree with the writer's feelings. He just had to respect them. Instead, he invalidated them, dismissed them, and then made himself the victim when consequences followed. So, is the writer the asshole for walking away? Absolutely not. Not out of pride, but out of self-respect. He didn't destroy a relationship over one comment. He walked away from a partner who made it crystal clear that his heart, his experiences, and his emotional safety didn't matter. And to anyone who's ever been called too sensitive for standing up for themselves, you're not too much. You're not the problem. You're someone who finally decided that your peace is worth more than someone else's comfort. The writer made the right call, and maybe, just maybe, that's the real moment worth celebrating. Am I the asshole for adopting a dog after I thought my boyfriend broke up with me? Let's be real for a second. There's a difference between taking space and vanishing into thin air, between working on yourself and leaving someone hanging without so much as a text. And sometimes when someone says, I need a break, what they really mean is, I want out, but I'm too much of a coward to say it. This story, it begins exactly there. The writer's boyfriend was struggling. Life had gotten overwhelming. And instead of really communicating, he said something vague. He said he needed to press pause. Not end things, not take a week, not define what the pause would even mean. Just press pause, like a movie, like a TV remote, like a relationship could just sit frozen in time until he was ready to hit play again. He said he was heading to Washington to stay with family to do some soul searching. The writer, confused but trying to respect him, asked what that even meant. Because let's be honest, how do you pause a living, breathing relationship without leaving someone emotionally stranded? But she honored his wish. Still, she reached out, not to beg, not to chase, just to check in. Let me know you arrived safely. Say hi to your mom. Are you okay? No reply, no read receipts, no returned calls, nothing. Silence. And silence, when it's deliberate, can be deafening. Eventually, the writer left a voicemail, heart pounding, hands probably shaking, and asked the question no one ever wants to say out loud. Did you break up with me? Still no answer. Not even a, hey, I'll explain later. Nothing. At some point, silence becomes an answer of its own. And the writer did what most of us would do after 6 painful, unspoken weeks of being ghosted. She tried to move on. Her best friend gave her advice we've all probably heard at some point. Find a distraction. Pick up a new hobby. Watch something new. Do something, anything, that isn't tied to him. She chose to adopt a dog, not just any dog either, a senior shelter dog. A calm, gentle soul who just wanted warmth and a lap to rest his head on. Someone who, in his own quiet way, offered the peace and comfort she'd been missing. A soft heartbeat at her feet instead of the echo of unanswered texts. And let's not forget, she never even considered a dog before. Her boyfriend is severely allergic to pet dander. While they were together, she respected that boundary. But now, she thought they were done. So she brought that sweet dog home. And just as she started settling into this new normal, 6 weeks later, her phone lights up with a message from her boyfriend, like he's just returning from vacation. He says he's back. And get this, he's coming over tomorrow to unpause the relationship. No discussion, no warning, just play. The writer is stunned, understandably. What relationship? She asks. Crickets. He shows up at her door the next day, brimming with personal growth and grand ideas of moving in together, as if he hadn't been MIA for the better part of 2 months. He's ready to resume his journey, resume the relationship, resume her. And then he sees the dog, and suddenly all that enlightenment, all that newfound self-awareness, gone. He freaks out. He panics. He doesn't step into the house, just stands there and starts unraveling, because he's allergic, and there's now a dog in his space. But here's the problem. This isn't his space anymore. He left. And whether or not he said the words "we're breaking up," his actions screamed it. He tells the writer that she betrayed him, that she should have known better, that she was inconsiderate for adopting a dog that would make him sick, even though he ghosted her, left her confused and heartbroken, and then tried to walk back into her life like he could just hit rewind. The writer explains her side. He says he told her he needed space. She says not answering a single message is ghosting. They go in circles, and let's just sit with that, shall we? 6 weeks, not a word, not an "I'm okay," not a "hang in there." Meanwhile, she's left to sort through the wreckage alone. So now he's back, trying to reverse time, and claiming that her adopting a dog, a quiet, loving companion, was a betrayal? No. What's truly wild is this. The writer is still asking if she did something wrong. She's questioning herself, wondering if she needs to break up with someone who already left, but she's not the one who disappeared. She didn't ghost. She didn't pause anything. She simply moved forward when he vanished. Let's be clear, you don't get to disappear and expect someone to wait in stasis until you're ready to come back. That's not how love works. That's not how respect works. So is the writer the asshole for thinking he ended things? For finding comfort in a dog that needed her just as much as she needed him? Absolutely not. In fact, if anything, she showed more loyalty to a shelter dog she just met than he did to a relationship they'd built together. So to answer the writer's question, no, you're not the asshole. You're just someone who got left behind. and did what you needed to heal. And as for him, you can't press pause on people like they're content on a screen, because eventually they'll stop waiting and start living. Am I the asshole for requesting to remove my thesis partner from our research, even if it might cost her graduation? Let's set the stage. It's your final year in college. The pressure's high, the finish line is close, but just far enough that one wrong move could wreck everything. And if you're lucky, you get a thesis partner who shares your drive, your discipline, and your understanding of just how important this is. The writer was not that lucky. He's part of a small, close-knit program, just 8 students total. So naturally, people know each other, they've worked together, shared lectures, projects, maybe even late-night cram sessions. When it came time for the final thesis, everyone was paired up, and the writer got partnered with someone familiar, a woman he'd already collaborated with in the past. Now, she had a bit of a reputation. Last-minute submissions, brushing up against deadlines, but always managing to pull through just enough to keep afloat. So, the writer wasn't thrilled, but he wasn't worried either. He figured he could carry the load when needed. But this time, it wasn't just late work, it was practically no work. Here's what they were up against. Both of them working night shifts, already tough. But his partner also had a child, and the writer, showing patience and empathy, tried to accommodate that. He gave her space. He adjusted timelines, he understood. He even managed to interview her 3 times over 3 months, while she was constantly unavailable to return the effort. When it came time for transcription, an exhausting task, they agreed to split the work. But when the deadline approached, she hadn't touched a word of it, not even a paragraph. So the writer, he did it all. Every minute of audio, every page of transcript, just to keep their thesis alive. Then came the encoding process. Tedious, technical, soul-crushingly boring. They split it again and again. She vanished. For a month, he messaged, checked in, reminded her, begged, in the way only exhausted group project victims know how to do. Nothing. No progress, just excuses and updates on her Facebook stories. Eventually, the writer gave up and just did everything himself. Again, their advisor tried to be diplomatic, asked her to at least pay for the software license they were using. That was her one and only contribution. Still, somehow the writer continued to offer her chances. He asked her to handle the defense presentation and write the script. A fair trade, right? But on the day of the defense, the presentation was unfinished. She showed up an hour and a half late. The script she gave only covered 20 pages for a 45-slide thesis deck. So there he was, in the presentation room, scrambling to fix everything, once again in real time. While she sat there like a passenger on a bus, she didn't even help fuel. But it wasn't over. After the defense, they were told to redo the encoding and rewrite key chapters. A tough ask, but doable, with effort. The writer dove in immediately, got to work, started his revisions. She did absolutely nothing. No new documents, no progress, just more vague, I'll get to it messages, while she kept casually posting to social media like graduation wasn't even on her radar. And that's when the writer reached his limit. He asked the advisor for permission to submit the thesis under his name alone. That means his partner? She wouldn't graduate. Harsh? Maybe. But after months of doing nearly 100% of the work, carrying her across every deadline, every task, every critical piece of research, can you really blame him? Now, others are calling him cruel, saying he should just carry her one last time. But here's the thing. How many last times has there already been? One more slide deck, one more transcription, one more excuse, one more promise that never turned into action. And let's not forget, this isn't high school. This is a thesis, a professional level academic requirement, the kind of project that defines your final year, your GPA, your readiness for the next step. So no, writer isn't being petty. He's not being vengeful. He's setting boundaries that should have been set months ago. Because when you carry someone long enough, eventually they start standing on your back. Letting her fail isn't the punishment. It's the consequence of her own inaction. And if graduation was really that important to her, she would have treated the work like it mattered. So is the writer the asshole for pulling the plug? For refusing to sacrifice his future for someone who couldn't be bothered to open a Google Doc? Absolutely not. He's not the villain here. He's the one who kept the wheels turning while the passenger took a nap in the back seat. This wasn't a partnership. It was a one-man thesis with a ghost for a co-author. And now the writer is simply saying, enough is enough. Am I the asshole for losing my shit after my wealthy parents told me they saved nothing for my college because student loans build character? Let's set the scene. The writer is a teenager about to enter one of the most overwhelming and uncertain phases of life, college. Now imagine standing on that cliff, looking into your future, hoping there's a net waiting to catch you, only to find out the people who could have built that net didn't even bother. The writer grew up in a family where success wasn't just expected, it was the bare minimum. A father who's a surgeon, a mother who's an attorney, both highly educated, both living lives that are likely built on comfort, stability, and yes, privilege. The kind of household where you'd assume, like most would, that there was a plan, a safety net, that mom and dad with their elite degrees and impressive incomes had made sure their kid wouldn't start adulthood in a financial pit. But one day, just casually, they dropped the bomb. They told the writer that they had saved nothing for college. Nothing. Not because they couldn't, not because something tragic or unavoidable happened, but because they chose not to. Their reason? Student loans build character. Being accountable for your own education makes you stronger. The writer, understandably blindsided, asked why. Why, after years of pushing for high grades, of attending top-tier schools, of living in a social circle where college is not a dream but a default? Did they not prepare for this? Their answer? We assumed you'd get a full ride, like we did. Let's pause here. That assumption alone is astonishing. We're not talking about a 4.5 GPA valedictorian. We're not talking about national science fair winners or Olympic-level athletes. We're talking about a solid, hardworking student. The writer has a 3.76 GPA. That's not bad. It's not lazy. It's not slacking. It's respectable. But it's also, in today's hyper-competitive academic world, not enough to guarantee a free ride, especially at top schools. And their parents knew that. They knew how the system works. They went through it themselves. But instead of helping, they gambled with their child's future, and they lost. Let's talk about pressure. The writer goes to a school where getting a B is practically social suicide, where AP classes are the norm, not the exception, where being average means you're surrounded by overachievers who've never seen anything less than an A. And still, through all of that, the writer pushed, struggled, balanced a job, stayed up late, grinding through subjects that didn't come easy. They weren't gifted at everything, but they showed up. They tried, they kept their grades solid, they kept their nose to the grindstone, and all they wanted, was to be told they did okay, that their effort mattered. Instead, they got a reality check that felt more like a slap in the face. They weren't asking for a Tesla. They weren't asking for a vacation. They were asking for the bare minimum of parental support, a shot at college that didn't come with 20 years of debt attached to it. So yeah, the writer snapped. They lost it, yelled, cried, said things out of anger and betrayal, and now they're here asking the internet if they're the one in the wrong. But let's break this down. Is it technically a parent's legal obligation to pay for their kids' college? No. Is it morally reprehensible to withhold support when you absolutely can't afford it and chose to build a life where college is the expectation? Arguably, yes. Because this wasn't about teaching the writer accountability. This wasn't about character. This was about control. These parents raised their kid in an environment where anything less than Ivy League tier performance is seen as failure, and then pulled the rug out from under them when they didn't meet impossible standards. And here's the real kicker. The writer didn't even want all this pressure. They begged to go to public school. They knew they weren't going to be number one. They wanted to fit in, not burn out. But their parents pushed for prestige, for rigor, for status. And now, the moment it's time for them to invest in the future they insisted on, they're pulling back, saying, you're on your own. And that right there, that's betrayal, dressed up as a life lesson. So no, the writer isn't the asshole. They're a teenager who worked hard, did their best, and got told that wasn't good enough. Not by teachers, not by the system, but by their own parents. So to the writer, you are not mediocre. You are not a failure. And you are not wrong for feeling shattered by this. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to scream. It's okay to mourn the version of your future you thought you'd have. Because this isn't just about tuition. It's about the years of pressure that were never met with praise, about feeling like your best effort was a disappointment, about realizing the people who raised you might not have your back like you thought, but you will figure it out. You've already proven you're resilient, more than they ever gave you credit for. And when you walk across that stage one day with a degree you earned despite the odds, you'll know exactly who got you there. It wasn't them, it was you. Am I the asshole for feeling like I failed as a parent after my daughter came out as gay? Let's walk into this story softly, but with our eyes wide open. The writer is a parent who, by all accounts, has done their best to create a home where love wasn't conditional, where identity wasn't something you had to fight to have accepted, where being yourself wasn't supposed to be some kind of grand announcement. It was simply allowed. But even in a home like that, there can be unspoken shadows. And one night, those shadows stepped out into the light. The writer's daughter, 23 years old, threw a dinner, a full-on family-wide gathering, plates clinking, wine flowing, conversation polite but slightly charged with something. A tension nobody could quite name until she stood up, nervous, unsteady, maybe a little tipsy to get the courage up. And finally, with a trembling voice, she said the words, "I'm gay." Silence. Not shocked silence, just puzzled. People looked around, exchanging glances like they were trying to find the punchline. And the writer, the one who'd known deep down for years, they simply said, "Okay, who wants dessert?" Now, here's where the heartbreak quietly creeps in. Later that night, the daughter came to the writer in tears. She wasn't upset that they didn't love her anymore. That wasn't the issue. She was crushed because it felt like it didn't matter at all. She had built up the courage, planned a dinner, poured her truth into the room like it was made of glass, and what she got was indifference. To her, it wasn't just a sentence, it was a moment, a vulnerable, terrifying leap, a declaration of identity, built over years of internal tension, years of wondering if it was safe, if she'd be enough. But to the writer, it was nothing new, just another detail in a world that didn't need explaining. And here's where things get complicated. The writer didn't say anything cruel, they didn't reject her, they didn't even flinch. In fact, they believed they were doing the right thing. That not making a big deal out of her being gay was the ultimate show of acceptance. Acceptance. The point was, you didn't have to come out, you've always just been you. But that right there is where the wires crossed, because what felt like comfort to the writer felt like dismissal to the daughter. And this is the part that hurts, the part that twists the knife in the gut of any parent trying to do right by their kid. The writer feels like they failed, not because they rejected her, but because somehow, despite all their love, she still felt she had to prove herself, still felt the need to announce her truth. In the writer's eyes, if she'd truly known she was loved no matter what, why did she feel she had to come out at all? Why did she think she needed a dinner, a speech, a grand reveal? That's the heartbreak. That's where the guilt lives. The writer even offered to go to protests with her, to support her in every way they knew how. But still, that sting of not having their moment acknowledged the way they needed, it lingered. And here's the thing that's so painfully human about this story. Both sides are trying. Both sides care deeply, and both feel hurt. The daughter wanted her identity to be seen, not just tolerated. She wanted the room to shift when she said those words, not because it was shocking, but because it meant something to finally say them out loud. And the writer, they wanted their acceptance to be so deep, so automatic, that she never had to make that speech in the first place. There is no villain here, just love that got lost in translation. So, is the writer the asshole? No, absolutely not. But that doesn't mean there's no room to grow. Because sometimes what we think is acceptance can come off as emotional distance. Sometimes what feels like reassurance sounds like minimization. When your child opens a wound in front of you, even if you don't think it should hurt, it's still your job to see the blood, to offer a hand, to say, I see you, and I know this wasn't easy. Sometimes it's no big deal feels like you didn't notice they were bleeding. So to the writer, your heart is in the right place, but love isn't just shown through what you say, it's how you say it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is sit in that moment. Let it land. Say, thank you for telling me. That took a lot of courage. I'm proud of you. It's not about overreacting. It's about matching the weight of their emotion with your presence. Your daughter didn't need drama. She needed recognition. She needed to feel like that truth, spoken out loud, didn't just echo into silence. So no, you're not the asshole. But this is a moment, a delicate, painful, important one. And how you move forward now matters far more than how you reacted then. Take the time, sit with her, tell her she is seen, not just loved, but understood. Because in the end, that's all any of us are ever really asking for. Am I the asshole for poking fun at my cousin's divorce after she insulted my wedding? The writer, a 29-year-old woman, was married young, just 20 years old. She and her husband didn't have much, but what they did have was love. Real, raw, wholehearted love. The kind that doesn't care about crystal chandeliers or embossed invitations. So when it came time to tie the knot, they kept it simple. Small, heartfelt, humble. No over-the-top venue, no show-stopping gowns, just family, vows, and a future built on shared dreams instead of shared debt. But here's the twist. Her cousin, 36 now, had a wedding just months before hers, and it was the complete opposite, a grand spectacle. Think velvet tablecloths, custom lighting, the kind of wedding that people still talk about years later as the standard. And you know what? Good for her. Everyone deserves a wedding that reflects who they are. And back then, this cousin wasn't just a guest. She played a big role. She helped decorate the writer's wedding, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And the writer didn't take that for granted. She gave her cousin credit publicly, paid her for the effort, and even made a speech thanking her from the heart. That's grace. That's gratitude. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Now, years later, and 4 years after her own divorce, that same cousin has made it her pastime to mock the writer's wedding. Not just once, not in passing, repeatedly. She snickers about how small it was, how corny the venue looked, and even goes as far as to insult the bridesmaids and the groom's family, calling them useless on the day of. It's like she's holding a personal grudge against a wedding that had nothing to do with her happiness or lack thereof. And the writer? She's taken it, again and again, swallowed her pride, bit her tongue, because in her mind, her cousin's opinion doesn't really matter. She's proud of the love she built, proud of her marriage, still going strong nearly a decade later. But today, on Father's Day, with the whole extended family gathered, something snapped. Her cousin started up again, this time mocking the wedding to her new boyfriend as if it were a running joke. Public, loud, mean-spirited. And the writer? She didn't plan it, she didn't scheme it, but the words just came out, well, at least I'm still married. Oof. And just like that, the room froze. Not because the cousin didn't deserve it, but because finally someone said the one thing no one had the guts to say out loud. And now everyone in the family is upset with the writer. Suddenly she crossed the line. She went too far. But where was this moral compass when her cousin spent years ridiculing a sacred moment? Where was this energy when those comments were tearing someone down for fun? Let's take a step back. This wasn't about one comment. It was about years of passive-aggressive jabs, of insults that went unchecked, and a woman who took the high road until she finally had enough. Because there's only so long you can smile through someone making a punchline out of your most meaningful moments. And sure, the writer's response was sharp. It cut. But let's be real, sometimes the truth does cut. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only way her cousin was ever going to stop. Was it a low blow? Maybe. Was it unprovoked? Not even close. There comes a point where silence isn't strength, it's just permission. And the writer decided she wasn't going to keep giving it. So Is she the asshole, or is she just a woman who got tired of pretending that cruelty was comedy and finally stood her ground? You decide. Am I the asshole for wanting to tell my husband's best friend that his wife is sleeping with our son? There are moments in life that punch harder than any betrayal you ever imagined. Moments that leave you stunned, breathless, left wondering how things got so twisted right under your roof. This is one of those moments. The writer, a mother, a wife, a woman simply trying to do the right thing, found herself staring into the heart of a nightmare, and it all started with a phone carelessly left on the kitchen counter, a message that lit up the screen, a name she recognized, a message she'll probably never be able to unsee. It was Lisa. Yes, that Lisa, her husband's best friend's wife, the woman who's been part of their extended family circle for years, the woman who's known their son since he was 9 years old. And now Lisa is having an affair with the writer's 19-year-old son. Let that sink in. A married woman, nearly 20 years his senior, sleeping with her best friend's teenage child. A woman who watched this boy grow up. A woman with a child of her own. And somehow she decided this was okay? Now imagine being the writer in that moment, scrolling through her son's phone, jaw tightening, stomach churning, reading messages no mother ever expects to find. Explicit messages. Graphic ones. And suddenly the boy she raised, the boy she fed and bathed and taught to be a decent man, is entangled in a web so morally off course, it's hard to know where the blame even begins. She confronts her son, expecting maybe guilt, maybe regret, but instead, she gets defiance. I'm an adult. I can make my own choices. Choices? This is a choice? Sleeping with a married woman who's practically family, a woman who, according to him, is lonely and depressed, and who respects him in a way girls his age don't? What does that even mean? How broken must things be for a teenager to view this as something noble or validating? And still, somehow, the writer holds it together. She does what many would consider the bare minimum of moral decency. She threatens to tell Lisa's husband. Because how can you live with yourself knowing something like this is happening in silence? You don't need to burn down a life with a torch. Sometimes silence is enough to do it. But here's where the story gets even more gut-wrenching. When the writer turns to her husband for support, expecting shared outrage, or at least some moral clarity, he turns on her. He doesn't ask how to protect their son from a scandal. He doesn't suggest therapy or intervention or even a serious conversation. Instead, he panics about losing his friendship. If you tell Lisa's husband, my friendship will be ruined, let that settle for a moment. Not our family might be in crisis. Not our son needs guidance, but his friendship will be ruined. What is that? Fear? Denial? Or maybe a coward's way of protecting comfort over consequence? So now the writer is standing alone. She sees a young man spiraling, a woman who should know better, taking advantage, and a husband more concerned about his weekend golf buddy than the integrity of their home. So she asks the internet, am I the asshole for wanting to blow this whole thing open? For wanting to tell the truth? For trying to stop something that feels so profoundly wrong? Let's be clear, the writer is not the asshole. In fact, she may be the only person in this story with a functioning moral compass. Yes, her son is legally an adult, but being legal doesn't make this affair okay. And age doesn't always equal maturity. This is a deeply inappropriate relationship. Lisa is married. Lisa is a mother. Lisa has known this boy since he was in elementary school. The power imbalance is undeniable and frankly, sickening. And the writer, she isn't being controlling. She isn't overreacting. She's reacting like a mother, a human being with basic decency, watching something unfold that no one else seems to have the courage to stop. If anything, she's trying to prevent a disaster from growing. And what about Lisa's husband? What about the man being betrayed by the two people he trusts most? He deserves the truth, even if that truth comes from an unexpected place, even if it breaks a friendship. Because friendship built on silence in the face of betrayal isn't real friendship. This story isn't just about infidelity. It's about the rot that spreads when no one is brave enough to speak out. The writer saw it, she tried to act, and everyone else, they looked away. So no, she is not the asshole. She's the alarm in a house where everyone else is pretending not to smell the smoke. Am I the asshole for asking my sister to stop correcting my autistic son's behavior during family gatherings? The writer, a 25-year-old mother, isn't asking for much. She's not trying to control the whole family dynamic. She's not demanding that everyone walk on eggshells. All she wants is one thing, for her son, Jamie, to feel safe, seen, heard, and most of all, respected in the one place that's supposed to offer unconditional love. Jamie is 7 years old. He's autistic, and like many neurodivergent children, he experiences the world through a different lens, a more sensitive one. Loud noises, unfamiliar spaces, too much happening all at once, it can be overwhelming. His responses? Perfectly reasonable. He flaps his hands. He wears noise-canceling headphones. He makes sounds that help him process and regulate. These aren't bad habits. These are coping mechanisms. This is how he survives in a world that wasn't built with him in mind. And for the most part, the writer's family gets it. They may not fully understand autism, but they've accepted Jamie. They try, they show up. But then there's the sister. At 28 years old, she doesn't just fail to understand, she actively dismisses. Every family gathering has become a battleground of judgment, where instead of celebrating connection, Jamie finds himself under scrutiny. She tells him to stop flapping, to stop making noises, to sit still like a normal kid. Let's pause there. That phrase alone, like a normal kid, is a loaded dagger. It sends a message, whether spoken or not, that Jamie is somehow abnormal, wrong, embarrassing. And it doesn't stop at words. No, she once physically removed his headphones, a direct violation of his space, his autonomy, and his need for comfort. And for what? Because she believes he needs to toughen up, because in her eyes, fitting in matters more than feeling safe. Now the writer, who's already navigating the 1,000 invisible struggles that come with parenting an autistic child, finally speaks up. She tells her sister to stop, to back off, to show some humanity. And what does she get in return? Dismissal, minimization, a gaslit accusation that she's the one being too sensitive. But let's be real for a moment. This isn't about being sensitive. This is about protecting your child from being shamed for who he is. This is about drawing boundaries where none existed before. This is about saying no to casual cruelty disguised as tough love. The writer isn't asking her sister to understand every facet of autism, but basic decency, basic respect for a 7-year-old child, that's not too much to ask. And what's more heartbreaking is the toll it's taking on Jamie. The flinches, the anxiety, the growing hesitation to even attend family events. The very places where he should feel embraced have started to feel like minefields. Why should he have to perform to someone else's standards just to be allowed in the room? And yet, the writer wonders if she's the problem, if drawing that line in the sand makes her the villain. She wonders if, for the sake of family peace, she should let it go. But here's the truth. Peace without dignity isn't peace. It's silence. Silencing Jamie's needs in the name of family harmony isn't kindness, it's complicity. And the writer refusing to allow that to continue, that is not selfish. That is not overreacting. That is love. That is advocacy. That is being the exact kind of parent Jamie needs her to be. So is the writer the asshole for asking her sister to stop? Absolutely not. She is a mother protecting her son's humanity. She's a woman standing in the fire of family tension to keep her child from being burned. And if that makes her the sensitive one, then maybe we need more people who are sensitive. More people who don't stay silent when someone they love is being quietly torn down. To the sister, if your version of love comes with shaming, force, and correction, you might want to ask yourself, who's really the one that needs correcting? To the writer, no, you are not the asshole. You are a mother doing exactly what a mother should. Am I the asshole for taking unnecessary money out of my daughter's pocket? Let's talk about accountability, not the social media kind, not the finger-pointing, online shaming kind. I'm talking about the real thing, the kind that shapes who you are when no one's watching, the kind you pass down to your kids, even when it's uncomfortable. That's exactly where the writer finds himself. Now, the writer has a 16-year-old daughter, Emily, and he's remarried. His wife Sasha has a son, Mark, also 16. They're blended family members, but not exactly living like siblings. See, Mark doesn't stay over often. He usually prefers his dad's place, but when he is around, according to the writer, Mark's a good kid, quiet, respectful, polite, the kind of teenager you don't have to constantly chase down to do the bare minimum. And let's be real, in the realm of teenage boys, that's saying a lot. Now, Mark's dad had to leave town for work. Timing's unfortunate since it's the end of the school year, so Mark's staying with the writer and Sasha for a few weeks. He mostly keeps to himself, doesn't make a mess, doesn't demand attention. But like most teenagers, there are rules to his peace. In Mark's case, it's his noise-canceling headphones. A gift from his dad and his one prized possession that helps him retreat from the chaos. Then comes the crack, literally. While Mark's out at school one day, Emily, who's already on summer break, goes into the room he's using. The same room where, when he's not around, the family stores a few extra things. That little overlap, it created a gray area that turned into a storm. Emily's always treated that room like open territory. She's been told to leave Mark's things alone, but she doesn't really listen. And the truth is, her stepmom, Sasha, she hasn't exactly been enforcing those boundaries either. She brushes it off. Most of Mark's stuff is replaceable. And maybe that's the problem. That attitude comes to a head when Emily accidentally snaps Mark's headphones. We're not talking about cheap earbuds. These were expensive, thoughtful, gifted headphones, something he actually cared about. When Mark finds out, he doesn't just get mad, he explodes. He calls Emily out. You're spoiled and you never have to answer for anything. And say what you will about tone or timing, but that line, it hit something deeper. The writer steps in to calm things down, but he doesn't let it slide. He tells Emily, you're paying him back. Even though Mark's dad immediately says don't worry, that he'll replace them without hesitation, the writer holds the line. Why? Because it's not about the headphones anymore. It's about ownership of your actions. It's about not walking through life, breaking things, and expecting others to sweep it up. It's about knowing that even if someone else can cover your mess, you should still take responsibility for making it. But now the house is divided. Sasha thinks it's unfair. Emily feels punished. Their argument, Mark's dad can afford 10 more. Why make a teenager pay out of pocket when there's no actual damage? But here's where the deeper commentary lands. Is money the only thing that matters in a situation like this? Sure, the headphones were replaced. But was the trust? Was the respect? Was the message sent to Emily that boundaries mean something? That when you break someone's property, even if they have the means to replace it, it still matters? See, it's not just about unnecessary money. It's about not raising a child who walks into someone else's room, breaks their stuff, and thinks the solution is shrugging because they're rich. Because today it's headphones, tomorrow it's relationships, rules, or reputations. So is the writer the asshole for making his daughter pay for something that technically didn't need to be paid for? Absolutely not. He didn't scream, he didn't shame her, he didn't even ban her from the room. He simply said, you're responsible. And that's what parenting is supposed to be. Not coddling, not excuses, not letting someone else's generosity erase the lesson your child needs to learn. Now, could there have been another way? Maybe. Emily could have written an apology, worked it off through chores, or offered a kind gesture back to Mark instead of cash. But that doesn't make the writer wrong. It just opens the door to further parenting, not less. In the end, it's not about the headphones. It's about teaching someone to respect what isn't theirs, even when they think the price tag says it doesn't matter. Am I the asshole for leaving my friend's birthday party after she didn't let me in her house? Sometimes the worst kind of rejection isn't loud. It's silent. It's a locked door. It's the sound of people laughing behind it while you stand outside, completely invisible. This story, it's about that kind of hurt. The writer, a 23-year-old woman, had just wrapped up a grueling 12-hour shift, 7 in the morning to 7:30 at night. The kind of shift with your bones aching, your brain buzzing, and your only real thought being, go home, rest, breathe. But she didn't do that. She had been invited to her friend Sasha's birthday party. And not just any party, this was a big night. A pre-game at Sasha's place, then out to the bars, celebration energy in the air. The writer didn't want to miss it. Sasha had seemed so excited earlier that day. The messages, friendly, warm, full of anticipation. So the writer pushed through the fatigue, rushed home, ate a quick dinner, threw on party clothes, and drove to Sasha's place. She arrived right on time, not fashionably late, not awkwardly early, 8:30 on the dot. Respectful, ready, and this is where it starts to unravel. She texts Sasha, "I'm here." Sasha replies, "Okay," simple, normal. The writer walks up to the door, music's playing inside. She can hear laughter, voices, life happening on the other side. So she knocks. No answer. Okay, maybe they didn't hear it. She waves at the Ring doorbell, knowing it sends a phone notification. Still nothing. She knocks again, louder, texts Sasha, no reply. She tries shouting through the door, "Hey Sasha, I'm here." And this time, she hears footsteps. She thinks maybe, finally, someone's coming to let her in, but instead, she hears the deadbolt click, locking her out. Let that sink in, not just ignored, intentionally shut out. Still trying to give the benefit of the doubt, the writer calls her boyfriend. She's hurt, confused, but he encourages her. Maybe it's just a mix-up. Maybe they didn't realize you were there. Don't assume the worst. She listens. She tries again. Text, "Okay, I'm out front." Sasha replies, "Okay, sounds good." Promising, right? She knocks again, and then the music dips. Sasha's voice, "Guys, I think she's here." The writer responds, "Yes, I'm here. It's me." Footsteps again, and click. Locked again. And silence. The kind of silence that hurt. The writer stood there for 12 minutes, not just waiting, begging, knocking, texting, calling out, doing everything short of breaking the damn door down. And still, no one let her in. So she left. Can you blame her? She texted Sasha to say she was going home, told her she'd been standing outside for over 10 minutes with no response. And then, of course, Sasha suddenly wanted to talk. She called. The writer didn't answer because she didn't want to blow up in anger, and honestly, who could blame her? Sasha later claimed she didn't see anyone through the peephole. Come on, she had a Ring camera. She replied to the texts. She heard the voice. She knew the writer was there. They all knew. So, what really happened? Was this some sick joke? Was she excluded on purpose? Was it peer pressure? Embarrassment? Maybe the other friends didn't want her there and Sasha didn't have the guts to say it? We don't know, and maybe the writer will never know. But here's what is clear. The writer is not the asshole. She showed up, she gave her energy, she gave her time, she trusted Sasha's invitation, and in return, she got humiliation, served cold through a locked door with a smile behind it. What happened here wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a message. Even if Sasha didn't intend it, the message was, "You're not really welcome." And the writer was right to leave, right to protect her peace. Right to listen to the hurt instead of waiting for more. Sometimes the clearest answer comes when someone has the chance to open the door for you, and they don't. So to the writer, you didn't make a scene, you made a boundary. And frankly, that's more than Sasha ever did. Am I the asshole for skipping a friend's 25th birthday after she ditched my wedding? Twice? Shh. Weddings. They're supposed to be about love, commitment, and the people who show up for you. It's not just the flowers, the vows, or the champagne. It's the friends who sit in the back row, beaming, knowing they've seen you grow. The ones who clap the loudest, cry the hardest, and make you feel like your day matters. So when the writer, 25 years old, married the love of her life, it wasn't some over-the-top spectacle. No 200-person guest list. No DJ blasting club music into the night. Just two brides, deeply in love, standing in front of a small circle of their most cherished people. 8 guests, a 45-minute ceremony. Intimate, meaningful, personal. And that's where we meet Bailey and Deb. They weren't just plus ones, these were friends. Engaged to each other, supposedly committed, not just to each other, but presumably to supporting people they love. But somehow, they made the day about themselves. It started subtle. The writer and her wife are posing for pictures, just them and the photographer, a couple trying to preserve the beginning of forever in snapshots. And what happens? Bailey and Deb start staging their own photo shoot right there, stealing the moment with no shame. And when the writer, trying to keep the mood light, cheers Deb on, "Yes, go Deb!" Deb has the audacity to act embarrassed, as if the celebration of someone else's wedding day was somehow cramping her vibe. Then, without a word, the two of them just vanish. Gone. Nowhere to be seen. During the very moments they should have been present for. Their absence didn't go unnoticed. Everyone saw it. Families, friends. But the writer and her wife, they brushed it off. Played it cool. Because that's what you do when you're trying to preserve the peace on your wedding day. Later, the after party. A chill bar. Private section. Friends. Laughter. But there's a catch. A $200 bar tab minimum. Totally doable with a small group. And Bailey and Deb, they finally show up. Late, but they seem in good spirits. Bailey plays some games, Deb drinks a bit, so maybe this will turn around. But then the switch flips again. First, they start talking about Deb's upcoming birthday. Don't make plans for Friday. That's fine. The writer and her wife had a potential trip in mind, but nothing locked in. They say they'll probably make it. Then Deb starts complaining about drink prices. A $12 cocktail, a $10 beer, and somehow that becomes a problem. And as if that wasn't enough, they vanish. Again, this time under the excuse of seeing a bartender friend across town. They tell other guests they'll be right back. But they close their tab. And if you've ever worked service, you know what that means. They were never coming back. And they didn't. No return to the bar, no return to the house, no final hugs, no congratulations, just a text saying, "We're heading home." That wasn't one slip. That wasn't a moment of poor judgment. That was two conscious exits from someone else's wedding day. A clear signal that whatever else they had going on, they didn't value this day or the people behind it. So the writer and her wife move on. They salvage what they can of their celebration. And then they take a spontaneous honeymoon. One final attempt to preserve the joy of their union, free of drama. That honeymoon just so happened to overlap with Deb's birthday. And when they told Deb and Bailey they wouldn't make it, silence. No response. No grace. No, it's all good. You just got married. Instead, cold shoulders, ignored texts, radio silence. The message was clear. How dare you skip my birthday, even though I ditched your wedding twice? And now the question is being asked. Is the writer the asshole for not going to Deb's birthday? Let's break it down. This wasn't a case of flaky friends forgetting to RSVP. This wasn't an accidental no-show. This was intentional disregard during someone's wedding day, no less. And let's not forget, Deb and Bailey invited people to their birthday celebration at someone else's wedding after party. That's bold, to put it lightly. The writer and her wife didn't ghost them. They didn't cancel at the last second. They gave a reason, a very valid reason. They were newlyweds finally trying to enjoy a moment for themselves, something their so-called friends had already tried to derail. So no, the writer is not the asshole. Not even a little. In fact, if anything, they showed restraint, grace. Because trust me, if most people had their big day derailed like that, there wouldn't have been any courtesy texts or explanations afterward. There would have been boundaries set in stone. Sometimes friendship isn't tested by how people show up for the fun. It's tested by how they show up when it's your moment. And when someone shows you twice that your joy is secondary to theirs, you don't owe them a damn thing. Am I the asshole for telling my wife she's not a single parent just because I work long hours? Sometimes it's not the shouting matches that wear you down. It's the quiet resentment, the unspoken tension that sits between two people who used to finish each other's sentences and now can't even finish a conversation without someone walking away hurt. The writer, 31 years old, a contractor, a father, is trying, really trying. 10 to 12-hour days in a physically demanding job just to make sure the lights stay on and the fridge isn't empty. He's not out with friends, not glued to a bar stool, not off chasing some midlife fantasy. He's doing what he thought was the right thing, working hard so his wife and son can be stable, safe, and supported. And yet, somehow, that's not enough. His wife, 29, stays home with their 3-year-old son. And if you've ever stayed home with a toddler, you know it's not just play dates and nap time. It's chaos, exhaustion, repetition. It's wiping noses, calming tantrums, cooking meals that get thrown on the floor, and doing it all again the next day. So both of them are tired, but now the exhaustion is turning into something else: bitterness. Recently, the writer began noticing something. His wife had been venting, not just privately, but publicly, online, to friends, even on a Zoom call with her own mother. "I feel like a single mom." Those 5 words, casual to some, maybe even justified to others, hit him like a sucker punch. Because for the writer, it wasn't just a figure of speech. It was a dismissal of everything he's doing. A total erasure of his effort, his sacrifice, his presence, even if that presence is limited to early mornings and late nights because of work. That night, he finally said something. He heard her say it again: solo parent. And after the call ended, he told her that the words stung, that he didn't appreciate being painted as absent when he's working himself to the bone to keep their family afloat. Her response? "You're being defensive. I feel like a single mom. I handle everything alone at home." And here's where the heart of the issue lies, because both of them are right, and both of them feel alone. But here's the emotional core the writer is grappling with. How do you respond when your partner starts describing your shared life like you don't even exist in it? He's not trying to discredit her. He sees she's struggling. He knows the demands of full-time parenting. But for her to say she's doing it all alone, to him, it felt like a slap. Like everything he's doing, every aching joint, every missed dinner, every day he doesn't see his kid awake, meant absolutely nothing. It's not that she's lying. It's that her words carry weight. And those words, single mom, don't just describe her stress. They erase his contribution. They make him feel invisible in a life he's trying so hard to support. But here's the thing. This story isn't about who's suffering more. It's about a couple drowning on different sides of the same boat, and instead of throwing each other life vests, they're now pointing fingers. The writer isn't the asshole, but neither is his wife. What we have here is a fracture in communication, one that millions of couples silently suffer through. When one partner is physically absent due to work and the other emotionally drowns in childcare, the distance can feel impossible to cross. But that doesn't make either one the villain. The writer's feelings are valid. He's working hard. He's not neglecting his family. He's sacrificing time with them to keep everything running. His effort should be acknowledged, not reduced to some background function she resents. At the same time, his wife is probably speaking from a place of emotional depletion, not maliciousness. She may feel like she's parenting alone, not because he doesn't care, but because she's doing the daily grind without relief, without adult conversation, without shared responsibility in the moment. So where does that leave us? Stuck in a space where neither one is being seen fully. She feels emotionally abandoned. He feels emotionally erased. And now both are hurting, and neither wants to feel like the bad guy. In the end, the writer is not the asshole. But if something doesn't change soon, the resentment building on both sides could end up doing more damage than any single comment ever could. This isn't about being right, it's about being heard. And until they start listening to each other, not just reacting, they'll both continue to feel like they're doing it all alone. Am I the asshole for locking the bedroom door while my husband works? In the quiet hours of the night, when the world winds down and shadows stretch across empty rooms, there's something vulnerable about being home alone. Even with the familiarity of your own walls, your own belongings, even with the low hum of a TV or the whirring of an air conditioner, fear creeps in. That's where we find the writer, a woman working the first shift, navigating a lonely nighttime routine while her husband tackles second shift hours, often coming home well past midnight. Night after night, she goes to bed alone. The house is dark, still. Every creak becomes a question, every bump in the night, a what if. And so she does something many of us might never even question. She locks the bedroom door, not out of spite, not out of secrecy, but out of habit, out of a need for peace of mind. Because for the writer, locking the door isn't about keeping someone out, it's about letting herself rest. It's the mental reassurance that if something truly wrong were to happen, if someone tried to come through that door, it wouldn't be a cat or a washing machine. It would be clear. And in that clarity, she finds security. Not perfect safety, but just enough to fall asleep in a quiet house. And here's where the story turns. One night, things shift. Her husband gets off work early, a rare moment, maybe even one that could have been sweet. But instead, it becomes a flashpoint. He walks through the front door. Unexpected. She doesn't hear him. The TV is on, the AC is humming. A cat is curled up on her lap. She's comfortable, relaxed. And he walks up to their bedroom door and finds it locked. Now pause. Think about the psychology of that moment for both of them. For the writer, it's just another night. She didn't expect him, she didn't hear him, and unlocking the door took a moment. But for her husband, walking into what should be a shared open space, only to find himself shut out, that unlocked something else entirely. Suspicion. He starts asking questions. Why is the door locked? What's going on in there? What are you hiding? Suddenly, a routine act of self-comfort becomes a perceived betrayal. He doesn't believe her. He doesn't give her the benefit of the doubt. He sees the locked door not as a boundary, but as a red flag. And this is where things get emotionally complicated. Because yes, trust is the foundation of any relationship, but so is understanding. And when one partner starts assuming the worst based on something so small, so explainable, it points to a deeper issue. Maybe insecurity, maybe poor communication, maybe even just exhaustion turning into paranoia. Let's be real. Relationships like this thrive not on what's done, but why it's done, and whether both people are willing to hear each other out. The writer explained herself calmly. If the door is locked when he's not home, it's unlocked before bed. No secrets, no deceit, just a woman home alone, needing a moment of peace in the middle of long, isolated nights. And instead of accepting that, her husband jumped to conclusions. So, is the writer the asshole? No, not even close. She did what many people would consider completely normal. She locked the door in her own home during hours when her husband is typically not even there. And when he came home early, unexpectedly, she didn't lie. She didn't stall. She didn't sneak around. She got up, cat in lap and all, and unlocked the door. Let's say it clearly. A locked door doesn't equal betrayal. But a lack of trust, that can be far more dangerous than anything behind a lock. It's understandable that her husband felt surprised or even caught off guard, but suspicion without evidence, accusation without reason, that's how trust dies a slow, quiet death in the dark. This wasn't about a door. It was about fear, hers of being alone and his of not being let in. But here's the kicker. He already was let in, not just into the room, but into the life of someone who clearly values his presence, who greets him when she hears him, who only locks that door when she's left alone in a silent house trying to feel safe. In the end, the writer is not the asshole. What she is a woman doing her best to feel comfortable in her own space. And that should never be something she's made to feel guilty for. Am I the asshole for correcting my wife about slurping soup in public? Now here's a situation that sounds simple on the surface. Soup, a spoon, a slurp, but underneath, it's about respect, public embarrassment, cultural nuances, and that fragile dance between love and judgment when you're married. The writer and his wife are out on what should be a beautiful evening. They're not grabbing fast food. They're not in their kitchen in pajamas. No, this is a chef's table experience. One of those intimate, curated dining events where the food is art, the lighting is dim, the plates are pristine, and every clink of silverware echoes with elegance. But just a few bites into their meal comes the slurp. Not just once, not a subtle sip, repeated, loud, and unapologetic. The writer, clearly uncomfortable, gently leans over and asks his wife to stop slurping the soup. And that's where the tone of the night shifts. The wife immediately fires back. She insists she's doing nothing wrong. After all, in Japanese culture, slurping is considered a compliment to the chef. It shows you're enjoying the meal. But the writer points out they're not in Japan. They're not even eating Japanese cuisine. They're in a fancy Western-style restaurant eating potato leek soup. That's when things take a turn from awkward to tense. The wife tells him he's an asshole for correcting her in the moment, that he's undermining her, implying she's doing something wrong while she's just enjoying herself. And here's where the emotional complexity starts to really unfold. This isn't just about soup anymore. It's about perception, pride, and partnership. Because on one hand, let's be honest, public etiquette matters. When you're in a room full of diners, dressed up and seated around a table designed for refinement, one person loudly slurping can break the mood, not just for their partner, but for everyone nearby. The writer wasn't being cruel. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't mock her. He simply asked her to adjust for the setting. But on the other hand, for the wife, this wasn't just about sound. It was about being told to shrink herself in public, about someone correcting her mid-meal like she was misbehaving, rather than just being herself. And maybe she felt judged. That one small comment, "don't slurp," sounded to her like, "You're embarrassing. You don't belong here." Even if that's not what the writer meant, that's what she heard. And in a marriage, those misaligned intentions, they cut deep. Now, here's where the writer brings a bit of humility in his edits. He admits that, yes, he still believes he was right about the etiquette, but he also recognizes that how he delivered the message may have mattered more than what he said. He could have waited until after dinner. He could have made a quiet joke about it. He could have leaned into love, not into frustration, because that's what these moments are really about. Not who was technically correct, but how two people choose to show up for each other when they feel embarrassed or misunderstood. And let's not forget, the writer also notes that his wife isn't Japanese. She's just spent time there, appreciates the culture, and may have picked up habits she views as respectful. In her mind, slurping wasn't an insult, it was a nod to joy. So, was the writer an asshole for trying to stop the slurp? No, not really. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't trying to humiliate her. But the real question might be, was this the best time and place to correct someone you love? Because marriage isn't about always being right. Sometimes it's about knowing when to let the soup slurp and when to hold your tongue until the drive home. In the end, both of them walked away from this moment feeling bruised. He felt ignored. She felt shamed. And somewhere in the middle, a bowl of soup sat growing cold, while something far more tender quietly simmered between them. So no, the writer may not be the asshole, but maybe, just maybe, next time, they both stir the conversation a little more gently. Am I the asshole for changing my last name to match my kids, even though my ex hates it? The writer, a 27-year-old man, didn't enter fatherhood in the most traditional way. For 2 years, he and Naya, now 26, were involved in what some might call casual, no strings attached, whatever happens happens kind of intimacy. No expectations, no promises, no future envisioned beyond the present moment. But then came the news that changed everything. Naya was pregnant. The writer, to his credit, didn't run. He didn't disappear or panic or play the "not my problem" card. He stepped up. He made it clear that he was ready to be a father, even if he and Naya were never going to be more than what they were. He wasn't chasing a relationship. He was chasing responsibility. And yet, Naya drew the line. She told him point blank, "Care about the kids, not me. We are not a couple, and we never will be." At first, that might have seemed fair, honest even. But 6 months in, the story took a sharp left turn. She dropped a bombshell. She was planning to put her new boyfriend's name on the birth certificate, not the biological father's. The writer was stunned, cut out, shut down. Her reasoning? Because it would be easier. Not right, not ethical, not best for the children. Just easier. And if that wasn't enough to make your jaw clench, there's more. At 8 months pregnant, the truth finally surfaced. It wasn't just one baby. Naya was expecting twins. Let that sink in. The writer, the biological father, hadn't even been told there were 2 children on the way. And the reason? According to Naya, the less he knew, the easier it would be to paint him as absent, uninvolved, when the custody fight came knocking. It was never about what was right. It was about what was convenient. Still, the writer didn't back down. When the twins were born, he petitioned the court. He demanded a DNA test. And when science confirmed what he already believed, he was their father, he didn't gloat. He didn't shout. He simply fought for the right to be there. A custody schedule was arranged. Child support was set. And finally, the writer was legally and emotionally tied to the children he'd never stopped wanting. But one thing still didn't sit right: the last name. His children. The ones he shares holidays with now, the ones he holds during bedtime routines, the ones whose future he's helping build, carried a name that wasn't his. It was a reminder of the fight, the exclusion, the messy history that led them here. So he made a decision. He legally changed his own last name to match his twins. Not out of spite, not as a move on some invisible chessboard with Naya and her boyfriend, but because when he looks at his children, he wants there to be no space between them, not in presence, not in commitment, and not in name. When Naya found out, she lashed out. She called it gross, said she hated the idea. But here's the thing, this wasn't her decision to make, and truthfully, it never should have been about her feelings to begin with. This was about a father closing the gap between himself and the children he fought to know. Yet, the judgment kept coming. Naya's boyfriend even took it a step further, mocking the writer, saying he might end up sharing a name with the kids someday, and the real father wouldn't. Imagine that, being taunted over a bond that's already so hard won. But here's what matters. This is the writer's first Father's Day. His first year with 2 babies who carry his blood and now his name. And instead of feeling bitterness, he feels pride. He feels belonging. He feels like their father in every sense. And maybe some people won't understand that. Maybe some will twist the story, say he did it out of ego or revenge or insecurity. But when the dust settles, what remains is simple. A man made a choice to stand next to his children, not just physically, but symbolically. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, so be it. So, is the writer the asshole? Or is he just a father who refused to let circumstance, resentment, and other people's comfort dictate how connected he gets to feel to his own children? You tell me. Should I move to Alaska without my boyfriend to get my life together? The writer, a 24-year-old woman, is currently living rent-free in her mom's house in South Carolina. And at first glance, that might sound like a cushy setup, but dig a little deeper and the cracks start to show. Her boyfriend, 26, unemployed with no savings, is also living there. Not just living, but leaning heavily. He lost his last job because he couldn't wake up on time, not because of illness, not because of bad luck, but because the alarm clock just didn't win that battle. And now, the weight of the relationship, financially and emotionally, is falling squarely on the writer's shoulders. Then comes the call that could change everything. Her mom, living in the remote wilderness of Dillingham, Alaska, offers them a golden opportunity. High-paying jobs, low expenses, and a chance to build something real. Imagine it. Cold winds, endless skies, and silence thick enough to hear your own thoughts for once. It's not just a change of location. It's a change of direction. A reset button most people only dream of. And the best part? Her mom is opening her home to them. She's not sending her daughter into the wild alone. She's offering shelter, support, and a safe landing. The kind of lifeline you don't get twice. Writer is thrilled, hopeful, maybe even hopeful, relieved. She brings the idea to her boyfriend, expecting maybe a little enthusiasm or at the very least curiosity. But his reaction? I don't know, he says, barely looking up from his guitar. And when she presses further, lets him know she's truly considering it, he shrugs. Okay, well, I'm probably not gonna go. Let's pause there. This isn't just about a guy not wanting to move. It's about a person who sees their partner reaching for more and doesn't even blink. No questions, no discussion, no concern about what it might mean for their relationship. Just strumming on a guitar while the future walks out the door. And maybe that's the real answer right there. Because while the writer has wandered across nearly every state, built memories, worked jobs, braved winters in Alaska, her boyfriend hasn't even left the Carolinas. Not once. He doesn't fly, he doesn't save, he doesn't plan. And it's not about being grounded, it's about being stagnant. They've been together for 2 years, but in all that time, he's never taken charge of his finances or shown the kind of ambition it takes to grow together. He's content where he is, even if where he is going nowhere. So now the writer finds herself at a crossroads. Not just geographically, but emotionally. Shh. Is this the universe whispering go? Is it a sign that she's spent enough time waiting on someone to catch up? Someone who doesn't even seem to notice she's moving ahead? Because life doesn't wait. Dreams don't wait. And sometimes love that doesn't grow becomes a weight instead of a wing. And the truth is, she's not naive. She knows Alaska. She's lived there, worked there, and thrived there. She understands the cost of living, when the isolation, the brutal winters. But none of that scares her. What's really scary is staying stuck. So now she turns to us, not just for judgment, but for clarity, for those who've been where she is. Is she the asshole for choosing herself, for finally putting her own future first? Because honestly, when someone hands you the map to freedom and the only thing holding you back is a person who won't even get on the plane, maybe it's time to fly. Am I the asshole for buying a pocket toy for myself even though my wife got upset? Some relationship conflicts don't begin with shouting matches or ultimatums. Sometimes they begin in the quiet, awkward places where desire, distance, and dignity collide. This is one of those stories. The writer, let's call him a man trying to keep something alive, even if it's in his own way, was honest with his wife. He told her up front, I'm going to order sex toys for myself. Not behind her back, not in secret, just straightforward, transparent. Why? Because, as he puts it, intimacy in their marriage has been scarce. They barely do it. But still, he wanted to meet his own needs, privately, respectfully, just like his wife already does. And it's worth noting, she has her own toys. She uses them. He doesn't shame her for that. He never tried to take them away, never said it made him feel inadequate. So he orders his own, a couple of onaholes, pocket toys. Nothing scandalous, nothing illegal, just a quiet, private solution to a need that hasn't been fulfilled in the marriage. But then she finds them, and suddenly everything shifts. She's upset. She's hurt. She says the toys look too realistic. She says it makes her feel insecure. She says she can't believe he would use something like that. And here's where things get complicated. Because while her reaction comes from pain, it also comes from a double standard. She uses her own toys, toys shaped like real anatomy, toys that serve the same purpose. But when he does it, it's different. It's personal. It's a wound. Now, the writer is left in a strange emotional limbo, wondering if he's the one at fault for simply doing what she already does, wondering if trying to privately address his unmet needs makes him the villain in his own marriage. So, is he the asshole? Let's slow this down for a second. This isn't really about the toys, it's about what they represent. For the writer's wife, the toys weren't just silicone and plastic, they were a flashing sign that said, I don't need you. Or worse, you're not enough. But for the writer, they weren't a replacement, they were a response to the silence between them, to the lack of connection, to the unmet intimacy he's quietly been enduring. And that silence, that absence, that unmet need, it matters, because you can love someone deeply and still feel starved. You can be loyal, committed, and still ache in the dark because your partner stopped reaching for you. This isn't a story about cheating. It's not betrayal, it's about coping, filling the gaps without hurting anyone. At least not intentionally. So no, the writer is not the asshole. But this marriage, it's wounded. Because now, both people are staring at the same object and seeing completely different things. To the writer, the toys were practical, a private solution, a survival mechanism. To his wife, they were a mirror. And what she saw in that reflection made her feel replaceable. That doesn't make her reaction invalid. Her hurt is real. But neither is the writer's need something to be ashamed of. He didn't lie, he didn't sneak, he didn't mock her or demand anything. He just tried to cope. So if there's a villain here, it's not a person. It's the gap that's grown between them. The space where conversations about intimacy, expectations, and emotional safety should have been happening all along. And maybe now they finally will.